Hey guys, welcome back. Hope you're doing well. Today I'm in Luminar Neo, and this is what I consider a fun video. This is not something I would do all the time, but I just kind of wanted to throw some extensions at a photo, or in this case, photos, and see what I could do. When we were in Iceland recently on the Luminar photo camp, we were making jokes about, oh, you could HDR and then focus stack and da-da-da. And I thought, you know what? Why don't I actually just do that? So I was out shooting recently and I came across a scene and I wanted to kind of get all of it in focus, and the light was such that I wanted to really get a good distribution of light. And I thought, you know, this is actually a great example of how you can use extensions in combination to really accentuate the look of your photo. Now, you've probably already, if you have the extensions, and by the way, there's a link down below if you want to check them out. You can purchase them individually or you can buy the whole group, but they are add-on products to Luminar Neo. In other words, but they give you lots of different capabilities. So you've probably done HDR and then you're like, well, maybe I need to add some denoise to it. Or maybe you've done something else and then you need to sharpen it or whatever. In this case, I'm taking different sets of bracketed photos, merging them to an HDR, and then merging those HDRs into a focus stack to get a rich HDR focus stack image. It's perhaps over the top, but it's a lot of fun. So let me just show you what I'm talking about. I've got 3 images here, these first 3, and then I've got another set of 3. And at this focal range or whatever, they look about the same. But let me just double click and show you this bracket set. I was focused on this handrail. This is downtown Austin. And this handrail had this scribbling on it. And I just thought it'd be kind of cool to have that in focus. But even at F9, which you can see in the upper right-hand corner, the rest of the scene is not in focus because this is so close. So even though I'm at F9, if I was focused way in the distance, I'd get a lot of things in focus, and this is where focus stacking comes in really handy. Hey, I want to have a clean focus all the way through the photo. That's what focus stacking does. But the thing is, I also wanted to do an HDR because the light was such that I was like, you know, it'd be kind of cool to do a bracketed set and then combine that into an HDR and then combine a different HDR into a focus stack. So I got these 3 images focused there in the foreground. And then what I did is I turned around and you can see this one is focused here and that's nice and clean, but the background is kind of blurry and that's because that's not where I focused. But in this next set of brackets, and I'll just show you the bright one because it's easier to see, I focused in the distance. So I took a bracket set focused on that background. And so if you look here, this foreground area, it's not really in focus, even though, again, I'm at F9, but in this case, I was focused on the buildings in the distance, and they're nice and crisp and clean. So what I did is I said, I'm going to take these 3, which are the ones focused on the foreground, and I dragged them over to HDR merge, and I came up with a blended HDR image focused in the foreground. But hey, in order to make a focus stack, I need to be able to stack that with something else, which is why I took another set of brackets, which is these 3 focused on the background. So that nice background is all in focus. And I dragged it over here and I got an HDR merge out of them as well. So now I ended up with 2 HDR merge files. Let me show you what they are. And I cropped them just to be clear here. So this is the first one, which is the one focused on the foreground. So if I zoom in, you can see I've got a nice clean image here on this like scribble on the handrail, but the background, not so much. And that's because it wasn't in focus, right? And the second HDR that I did is this one. And if I zoom in here, you can see not really very clean in that foreground area, but nice and crisp and beautifully focused in the background. And so this is where I said, okay, I've got my 2 HDRs. I've got a nice distribution of light across the entire scene in each of the 2 images. So 3 images made into 1 HDR, 3 different images made into a second HDR. So I've got 2 images, the result of the 6 that I started with. And what I want to do now is stick them together and make a focus stack. And so I just grab them and I drag them over here to focus stack, and it sticks them together. And that's the beauty of focus stacking. It will figure out how to blend it for you. You don't have to do a whole lot of work, let's call it. But what I've got now is an HDR that was focused on this foreground, nice and crisp and clean right there in the foreground. But as you can see, as I continue through the photo, I don't lose focus. And that's the beauty of focus stacking. I've got a nice crisp image all the way around, like all the way in the distance. All these buildings, those people on the bridge, all the stuff over here in the skyline, fantastically focused. Again, because of focus stacking. And so 3 raw files for one HDR, 3 raw files for a different HDR. Each of those were combined to make a TIFF file that was an HDR for the foreground focus TIFF, an HDR TIFF focused on the background. Those are blended together. Now I've got an HDR focus stack. So I'm just kind of throwing the kitchen sink. This is like a kitchen sink edit, right? I'm just throwing everything at it. But now I want to go in and just make some adjustments here. So the first thing I want to do is I want to drop the exposure a little bit just to darken it slightly. I'm going to add some super contrast. So basically I'm in here and I'm going about what I would consider kind of a normal edit. I want to get some of the parts of this image and just kind of make them look the way I want them to look. Part of which is making this a lot more blue hour looking and kind of managing the light. It was basically past dark, as you could see in the original files. And what I'm trying to do is bring back some of that look. And I started with develop, and then I go into super contrast, which is an amazing tool, frankly, that I just love, adore, and kind of fawn all over in these videos quite often. But I just love it. It just really does a lot of good stuff for you. And then I'm coming in here and just making these adjustments, and I am checking my notes to make sure I'm kind of coming up with the same kind of stuff that I did when I practiced making this HDR merge focus stack image for you. And let's see, I ended up at about there with super contrast. So let me show you the before. There it is. You can see quite a bit brighter in the sky. Makes sense. That's the point of light, or the primary source of light, and a little bit darker in the foreground. But I've kind of moved that around a little bit. So slightly brighter in the sky, darker in the foreground, and slightly flopped that in this edit with super contrast. Structure AI, I just absolutely love. And so I want to add that to the building. So I'm going to give that about a 30 or 31, but I'm going to use Mask AI, which is just a fantastic tool that I use all the time in Luminar Neo, because it goes in, and as you can see, the AI is getting ready and it's sorting out what the different things in the image are. So I'm going to say, let me have flora and architecture and man-made ground and humans and all that, and it finds the different things that I want in focus. Well, it didn't get everything, so I'm going to go ahead and get the brush, and I'm going to come over here, and I saw some things I want to just paint over with the brush. And so I'm going to do that, and I'm going to come along here because I definitely want this handrail, because that was one of the reasons I did the focus stack, is to get that in focus. So for sure, I'm going to give that a little bit of that structural crunch, is what I like to call it, with the Structure AI tool. And then, you know what, the rest of that, I think that looks fine. So I'm done with that, but I'm not done with Structure AI, because what I want to do is something I typically do is come back and I just soften it up. And so I'm going to come in here and do like a -65 or something. And once again, Mask AI, but this time it finds it quicker because it already found them the last time I used the tool. And what I'm going to do is get the sky and water, and it does a really good job. I mean, the only place it didn't really get it was between those bars, which again, with a brush, super easy to just come in and add that. Just get your brush size, however you want it to be. And, I recommend going slower than I am in this video, but I just want to show you that this stuff is easy and powerful and quick and all that kind of stuff. So I smoothed the water and the sky with negative structure after previously using positive structure to kind of crunch up all the man-made stuff. The building, well, the trees too, but the buildings, the bridge, all that. And now I'm kind of in the color mode. So in color harmony, I'm going to go into brilliance and warmth. And I actually, believe it or not, I cool this off a little bit more. I'm really kind of going for a deep kind of blue hour kind of look. I go into split color warmth, and I'm taking this to about a -25. So we're getting a really blue hour kind of feel to the image, which I like quite a bit, especially in cityscapes. That's my favorite time of day to shoot in cities, because all these lights are coming on. And then when the sky is blue, but the lights are on, and the lights are always kind of yellowy orange, it's a nice contrasting color, because if you are familiar with color theory and all that, yellow and blue, which, hey, by the way, right here in color balance, they're opposite colors, which means they're complementary. So I try to play that up a little bit. And what I'm going to do is in midtones, I'm going to do about a 5 here. And I'm going to do about a -7 there. So something about like that. I'm doing nothing in the highlights, but in the shadows, I'm going to do a little bit more blue. So a pretty minimal color adjustment in color balance, but overall from that to that with color harmony using 3 different tools out of the 4 there, which is just great. Absolutely love that tool. If you'd like to see more videos about that tool, let me know down below. And then vignette, I want to come in and, just give it a little bit of a, maybe a little bit more than a little, but I want to give it a vignette to basically kind of wrap this thing up. But actually, I decided I'm not finished. And so I'm going to come in here and do the things I want to do. I think like maybe right over here. Let's go like that for the center of the vignette. And the reason I chose the center is not just to make sure the vignette is, how do I describe it, vignetting in the right places, but also because I'm using inner light, I'm adding a touch of light. And so I added that kind of over here slightly to the left. And, I think that looks good. So there it is before vignette, and there it is now. You can see I'm creating a little bit more pop of light basically on the city, which is where why I went right over here, because that's kind of in the center of the city area. And this area over here is getting more of the vignette on the right-hand side. So I thought I was done, but I was like, you know what? There's another really cool extension here in Luminar Neo that I like to use a lot, and that's Supersharp AI. And while I don't really have motion blur, I thought it'd be nice to use universal. I usually come in at low, as I talked about in that video, and give it a nice extra little kick of crispiness, because if you remember at the beginning of the video, I said I want to have a nice distribution of light and I want everything in focus, which means I want everything crisp. That's why I did a focus stack, and that's why I did HDR. HDR for the light, focus stack for having focus clean throughout the image, and now Supersharp to crisp it up just about everywhere, but not entirely everywhere. So I'm going to let that run, and then I'm going to come apply this where I want to apply it. Okay, here it is. Supersharp AI has done its thing. Let me zoom in, let's say 200, and let's just take a look at how nice and sharp this looks with universal Supersharp AI applied across the photo. Here's the before. If you look at like that building on the right-hand side, it looks quite a bit softer, and now it's quite a bit sharper. And same with like this graffiti on the bridge. It's just a little bit softer in the before. You can see that there, and I let go and get back, and it looks a bit better. And then also over here, I'm going to just check this out as well. Let's see, maybe something about like that. Let's look at the before. There we go. Like in the buildings, you can see it's a little bit softer, and the after quite a bit sharper. And so, oh, actually one other thing, and that is masking. I want to go into Mask AI, and what I want to do is just apply this to like the architecture and the man-made ground. Let me just take a look and see what that comes up with. Yeah, that's pretty much it. The only other thing is get the brush and do the same thing here on the railing that I did before, because again, it's a focus stack. I was trying to get all this photo in focus, and if I'm going to sharpen, I might as well just sharpen up the stuff that I focus stacked for in the first place, right? So, it's missed a little bit here and there. I recommend taking your time and cleaning it up with the brush a lot better than I did, but that pretty much covers what I wanted to do. 6 different images, 2 sets of 3, which is basically an HDR for the foreground, an HDR for the background, blended the foreground HDR into a single file, so I got a nice distribution of light. Then separately blended the background focused image into an HDR, so I got a nice distribution of light there, which gave me 2 different TIFF files, stuck those together in focus stacking, went in and did a bunch of customized edits, and then hit it with Supersharp AI. Like I said, kind of a kitchen sink, which is like an American expression, it's like everything, including the kitchen sink, which means you kind of throw everything at something. Anyway, I just wanted to kind of check it out because I think I get kind of a mind-blowing level of focus and clarity and detail and sharpness and all that kind of stuff by doing HDR brackets and focus stacks and Supersharp AI. That's why I'm loving these extensions, because I've used 3 of them in this photo, and they are just helping me do really fun and interesting kind of things here. Now, the only other one that might come into play in a situation like this would be Noiseless AI, another great extension. But, I checked before recording this video, I didn't really need it. So you could run Noiseless as well to remove noise, but it wasn't something I really needed here. I just wanted to demonstrate you can stack, no pun intended, you can stack all these kind of tools together and come up with really, I think, mind-blowing results. So I've got sharp focus, sharp crispiness everywhere I want it, all the way through the image, thanks to HDR, focus stacking, and Supersharp AI. Hope that was a fun video for you, my friends. It was fun for me to make and experiment with. And I'll be doing more things like this and experimenting with these extensions and, frankly, just having fun. Because if you're not having fun taking photos and editing photos, I truly believe you're doing something wrong. So I'm here to have fun, hopefully inspire you to try some things and have something fun yourself. And thanks for watching, my friends. I appreciate it. I'll be back soon with more videos. If you enjoyed this video, check out that video, and I'll see you real soon. You guys take care, and until then, my friends, adios.